All right. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's still morning here on the East Coast. It's almost 10 o'clock. I apologize for setting the time at 9:30 and then moving it back to 10:15 and then jumping on now. But even with it being Saturday, I want to use my time wisely. And I got home from the cigar lounge last night and got into bed and got to sleep at a certain hour. And then I woke up at a certain hour, and I just want to make the proper use of the time today. It's funny, when you're working a 9 to 5, when you're just working in general, you are almost in a mouse wheel. And it's good when Friday gets here. For my current occupation in the federal government, we work something called a compressed schedule. And even so, that gives you a 3-day weekend every other weekend. But even so, that goes by just like this. So as soon as you get to your first day off, you're at your second day off. And before you know it, it's time to go back to your federal duties or whatever your regular work duties are. It's time to go back. So the time off, it always goes just like that, very, very quickly. Let me make sure this is broadcasting to YouTube. Yep, there is the red icon. So I am live. I'm not going to talk very long this morning. I didn't even write down my discussion points, so I'm going to freestyle this. Let me mute myself there. Yeah, so I'm just going to freestyle this. I'm going to go hopefully for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to wrap up because I have more things to do today, and it's a beautiful day outside. And one of the things that I want to do is go for I'll go for a bike ride out in nature. There are a lot of beautiful trails here in the DMV, and I want to go out and get some exercise. My football team is not playing today, which may or may not be a good thing, as they are embroiled in a investigation right now. But yeah, so I'm going to try to keep this brief. I see a few folks came in. Please smash that like button. If you haven't, the likes are free. And every like, every engagement for this particular channel helps out. This is a hard channel to grow because it's not, in my opinion, it's not the sauciest content. And it's not the most trending content. But I'm learning about this as I go. And I appreciate those of you who do come and support and listen to me talk sometimes. So please smash that like button, no matter how long you stay. I don't intend to go long today. Let me share this over on my original channel in case anyone wants to come over and listen to this. Okay. All right, well, I'm giving it a like from over there. All right. Thank you for whoever gave me that other like. Okay, that was shared over there. And whoever comes in, again, no matter how long you stay, please smash that like button. And if you're new, please consider subscribing. Okay, I'm going to play my intro, and then I'm going to jump in, and then I'm going to take another swig from my Colorado Buffaloes mug here. Let's see. Where's my intro? There it is.
So Amar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well,
out.
Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some t-shirts to go with it. So the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields.
Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Today is October 27th, or is it the 28th? It's October 28th. Wow. There are 2 more months left in 2023. So we are almost at the end of this year, and it has been an eventful year for the world in general, and also for me personally. And I will leave that there. All right. Once again, if you're just coming in, if you're coming in at all, please smash the like button and also consider subscribing to the channel and potentially share this content out. All of those things are helpful. If you are watching live or on the playback and you want to donate something to this channel, that's always helpful. My Cash App and PayPal are here. This channel is not monetized at this point. And you know what's interesting is a lot of the science channels that I watch, maybe it's the ones that I'm watching, I don't see AdSense on those channels. I don't see those channels monetized. I'm going to recommend the Tom Nelson podcast before this stream is over. That's one of my favorite podcasts, one of my favorite science podcasts. And when I watch Tom's content, I don't see ads running. So maybe that's a general science thing. I don't know. The same thing with Dr. John Campbell. I haven't watched his content lately, as there hasn't been a need for me to really observe the beer bug, the global contagion. But when watching Dr. Campbell's content, I don't recall seeing AdSense, and he's got over 1 million subscribers. So maybe it's a science thing. Please hit that like button if you haven't. All right, so I never want to leave this channel dormant. I think this may be my most important channel of all of them, though it may be the least entertaining for some of you all. But I did throw something on my community tab, and I said, for my subscribers, for those who regularly watch, is there anything you all want to hear about? So actually, I made it 3 topics. Strokes. Shout out to Uncle Ron Wills. Uncle Ron Wills, he put this on his community tab, so I think it's okay for me to say it here. He recently experienced a mild stroke, so that caused me to think about strokes and to wonder about strokes. I am, in general, in terms of age, I'm not far behind him. I'll just say a decade. So, that when someone has a stroke, the thought occurs to you, well, maybe, will I get one day? And if I do, what will it feel like? And how can I prevent strokes? So I threw that topic out there. I also threw out carbon dioxide. You guys know that I'm interested in the whole climate debate. And I found something on Tom Nelson's podcast that I thought was very, very interesting and very, very compelling. And I think about this climate thing all the time. So I threw that out there, and then I threw out the Science Writers Conference I went to. T. Riddler was the only one to respond. So he said, tell us about the Science Writers Conference. T. Riddler's not here right now. Maybe he'll show up, or maybe he'll watch on the playback. So I did go. So I thought I'd do something short on the Science Writers Conference. Our Willie 3R, thank you for coming through. Thank you for your continued viewership. Yeah, if you hang out for this entire thing, I'm not going to be on long. Please let me know what you think in the chat. And also, if you have questions, you always participate quite a bit while you are here. Willie 3R says, I monitor my blood pressure aggressively. When I hit my 40s, I worry about the stroke stuff as well. Yeah, so there are our metabolisms change. Our bodies change, just like the climate. Everything science related seems to change. Nothing stays the same. So you obviously can't eat the same foods that you used to in the quantities that you used to, and things change. Our hormones for men and women, those alter, and things in general just change. So as I've described here on this channel, when the last readings were taken, my LDL cholesterol and my HDL cholesterol, those were out of whack. So I had more LDL than HDL, which is dangerous because that puts you, in theory, at risk for cardiovascular disease, but also strokes. So I've been working to get those numbers back into balance. Some of that is exercise, some of that is diet, and in some of my research during that time of getting that news, stress can also raise your cholesterol. So I've been working to get those numbers under control. I just found a nice tofu stir fry recipe last night. So I'm going to try to infuse more tofu, more plant-based vegan recipes into my diet. So I'm excited about that. So yeah, this is all something that we have to monitor going forward. And for those of you who don't know, I'm interviewing Dr. T.S. Johnson on my original channel on Tuesday night about his book, Solutions for Black Misandry and Flat Blackness and Black Male Death. And there's a whole chapter. There's a lot in that book. There's a lot in Dr. Johnson's book, but there's a whole chapter on the health-related issues, the health issues that Black men face that are not covered and talked about enough. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of, in terms of suicide, in terms of prostate cancer, in terms of heart disease, in terms of the fentanyl crisis. There are a lot of areas where Black men are leading, and they're not talked about enough. And so a lot of people don't know, and these things are flying under the radar. So anyway, so T. Riddler said, hey, tell us about the science conference. Tell us about the Science Writers Conference. So I'm going to say a few words about that in the 15 minutes. And, things tend to go longer sometimes. I'm going to tell you all about that, what it is, why I went, and why it is significant that I went, and what my motivations were for going, and what my experiences were when I got there. So I'm going to freestyle this. Unfortunately, I didn't write my points down. I normally do that, but I don't intend to hold you all here long. Okay, so science writing. What is science writing? So a major, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's climate, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's cancer research and oncology, a major part of science is the communication, right? Scientists have to, if they're at major research universities like the University of Michigan, they have to write up extensive grants to the NIH here in Washington, D.C., or pharmaceutical companies or other foundations to get money to do the research, because the research costs money. So there's writing there involved, there's communication there involved, and then once they, assuming they successfully research that particular area and generate data, publishable data, that has to be communicated via publications, scientific publications. I think, let me just pull one up so you guys know what I'm talking about. This is one of my first author papers. While that's opening, I was thinking about my personal brand and my personal mission, as there aren't a lot of Black scientists, right? And we are underrepresented in this area. And I think that's part of my mission, to communicate this area to my people and maybe inspire other young Black scientists, because we kind of lag behind in this area in terms of ethnic groups in the United States and even around the world. So that has, there are a lot of impacts from that. Number one, you're not going to see a lot of us in these fields working at NASA or working at Tesla or even in the federal government. You're not going to see a lot of us there, but a lot of our people aren't going to understand the conversations that are taking place, particularly, and I've been outspoken about this recently, particularly around election time. One of the ways that, at least on the Democratic side, people are swayed into voting for one person or the other is whether or not they like them, whether or not that candidate can dance, whether or not that candidate has hot sauce, whether or not that candidate can do the wobble. A lot of people from my community, Willie or 3R, please back me up on this, vote based upon whether or not they like the candidate and not necessarily on whether or not they understand the policies, the proposed policies or the issues. Well, a lot of proposed policies are based upon science, particularly when you're talking about the climate and you're talking about energy. So if you don't understand the fundamental aspects of those conversations, a politician will come talking to you and talking to you and talking to you, maybe dancing for you, maybe pulling out their hot sauce for you, and those kinds of things. And you'll vote for them because of that, but you won't understand the other things that they're running on, and you won't understand the other things that they're talking about. That's huge for Black people in America, in my opinion. So I think that's part of my mission. So when these people, this is going to ramp up next year, when these people come talking to you next year, and when they come talking to us next year, it's important to understand what they're talking about and why. All right. Don't just look at how they dance. Don't just look at the hot sauce. Don't just look at whether or not they know the latest Tupac album, or whether or not they were listening to Tupac when they were in college, or whatever, or if they smoked weed or whatever. Be able to understand the discussions. All right. So science writing. So There's writing involved in getting grants if you're a professor at the University of Michigan. And then you also have to communicate what you found to the general public. One way that happens is through first author papers and primary science articles. So this is one of my first author papers. This is my first author paper from the University of Michigan. I'm not going to get into this now. I've talked about this to some degree already. I'll probably revisit this, but this is a form of science communication. But this is very technical. This is very granular. This is very esoteric. What we were studying and the way that it's reported here. And for the general public, something like this, especially in my community in Black America, the science presented that way and the granularity of it and the details and the data, it's going to go right over people's heads. And so when my parents, and I'll say this for my classmates and their families, when they came to our thesis defenses, a lot of the stuff that we were working on and the way we were presenting it went over a lot of people's heads. So if you're not in the science community, you're not going to understand all the technical terms. You're not going to understand the research questions. You're not going to understand the experimental models or the tools used. So there has to be a way, and there has to be someone to disseminate that information to the general public. There has to be someone to break that data and those scientific questions and all that jargon and all that esoteric talk. There has to be a community of people to break that up in an accurate way and disseminate that to the general public so that they understand. Okay. For a while, she hasn't really, I'm going to read a comment here from Willie R3. He says, YouTube is already clearing the way by removing distractions like propaganda attacking Black men. They're going to really try to get Black men into the Democratic fold, I think. Okay. So for a while, when I would go home to Buffalo, and Thanksgiving is coming up, for those of you who celebrate it, you're going to be sitting around the table. Generations of people will be sitting around the table talking about current events, talking about their lives, talking about what's going on. Well, one of the things my mother would sick on, God bless my mom, is the pharmaceutical companies. Oh, they charge all this money for these pharmaceuticals. They charge all the money. They charge all this money for these drugs. They're overcharging. People can't buy food. People can't pay the utilities because of the prices of these drugs. Well, the reality is, if you're on the inside, if you're doing research at the University of Michigan or Harvard or MIT or Stanford, or if you're at a pharmaceutical company, you know that it's a business. The pharmaceutical industry is a business. And once a pharmaceutical company identifies a drug target, I've talked about this here as well, they have a certain amount of time. There's a lot of research that goes into the creation of that molecule, and they have a certain amount of time to recoup their investment and make some profit on that molecule before that patent expires and it becomes a generic. So they have to recoup their money. So it's a business. So they're not just charging money. They're not just charging the money for that molecule just to be jackasses. They're trying to recoup and make money on their investment. Okay. So if you don't know that, it's going to look like, oh, these drugs are so expensive and da 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 da. No, they're trying to make the money back on their investments. You have to pay the scientists. You have to maintain those animals. You have to run your mass spectrometers and your HPLCs, and all that data has to be QA'd and QC'd and packaged and sent to the NIH. And then the FDA. So there's a whole world there. All right. Science communication. So whether it's at NASA Okay, whether it's a drug coming out of Pfizer or Merck, or whether it's an electric car made by Tesla, this information has to be communicated to the general public in a way that can be understood. Ideally, in a way that's not politicized. Okay, a lot of information that is being given to the general public today is politicized. It's being sent out there and presented to us with a certain agenda in mind. It's being sent out there to hurt us in specific directions. I'm going to talk about the conference in a minute, but a lot of you know, those who have been watching me, you know that I've taken an interest in the climate discussion, okay? And you all know that the climate discussion is pretty nuclear, and I found that out, that it's very nuclear. There are two distinct tribes within that discussion. There are the climate alarmists, and there are the climate deniers. All right, and part of YouTubing is entertaining, so I did create drops for the climate deniers and the climate alarmists. One of the faces of the climate alarmist side is none other than Al Gore.
We're still putting 162 million tons into it every single day, and the accumulated amount is now trapping as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every single day on the Earth. That's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs, and sucking the moisture out of the land. And
that's what's boiling the oceans. Okay. I love playing these Al Gore drops because he's very, very passionate. But the question is, are the oceans boiling? Are the oceans boiling? Here's another word from Al.
And sucking the moisture out of the land and creating the droughts and melting the ice and raising the sea level and causing these waves of climate refugees predicted to reach 1 billion in this century. Look at the xenophobia and political authoritarian trends that have come from just a few million refugees. What about 1 billion? We would lose our capacity for self-governance on this world.
Okay, so Al is one of the faces of the climate alarmist tribe. Okay, one of the faces of the climate deniers club, and I've gotten into this on this channel already about the particulars of this, and I'll probably revisit it. Please smash that like button if you haven't, if you're just coming in. Dr. Willie soon, and I found a podcast, a really good podcast, which is in the description box, from Dr. Willie soon, around Christmas time, driving to Buffalo after the winter bomb that bombed Buffalo and the rest of the Midwest, the storm bomb. Anyway, here are 2 words from Dr. Willie soon.
Every time you say, can we have a little debate? I don't understand your facts. Can you explain to me? They just say, no, no, no. Al Gore say so.
They say, no, no, no. Al Gore say so.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject. Because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
The average D student. Let me play that one again. That one makes me laugh. Hold on.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject. Because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
It's as sure as gravity. You guys are just deniers. So it turns out that actually, yeah, it's an area that's highly politicized, and it's an area that it's highly politicized. I'll just say that, and it's very nuanced, and there are a lot of moving parts when you're talking about climate. Okay, and that's why I took this slide from Dr. Soon's talk with Will Happer. So I think it's Will Happer. To understand climate, you have to understand astronomy, solar physics, geology, geochronology, geochemistry, sedimentology, tectonics, paleontology, paleoecology, glaciology, climatology, meteorology, oceanography, ecology, archaeology, and history. And that list is not complete. There's more you have to understand. That's why I made up this slide here. Do you believe in science? Science is asking why. It's considering alternative hypotheses, flexibility of mind, generating hard data, not believing things blindly, the peer review of data, and thinking critically and questioning. I was questioned by someone in my personal circle, someone I really, really cared about, and someone I still care about today, about whether or not I believe in science because of who I voted for in the past. All right. And this individual was kind of on the Al Gore side. So the oceans are burning, the world is burning up. You know, it's we're at the Armageddon. And if you're just listening to that side, if you're just listening to Al Gore talk, you're gonna believe, yeah, the oceans are boiling, the world is the earth is burning, the world is burning up, everything's gonna end tomorrow. But there's a whole discussion, and there's a whole other side that thinks the contrary, and that's generating data and generated data to say, no, well, hold on, pump your brakes. It's not that bad. The earth is doing what it's doing. The end is not near. All right. You need people to present both sides of something. You need people to present both sides of arguments. And people in society, when Al Gore, when politicians, when people with agendas, when they start talking, the danger is people rally behind these people, and the passion with which Al talked in those drops, that motivates people, that gets people revved up, that gets people angry, and people confront each other, and people sometimes are willing to fight each other over these things. You have young people who don't want to have children because they think the earth is about to burn up tomorrow or the day after. And the messaging, what I'm trying to get across to you all is the messaging is really important. And he or she who is delivering the messaging and packaging the messaging for everyone else, that is a really big deal. So science communication is a really, really big deal. She, thank you for stopping through. Thank you for coming and hanging out for however long you'll be here. She isn't the science. She is doing some farming and those kinds of things. So the general public, especially the AAAS FBA community, were underrepresented in science. And well, I won't say that, but when Al Gore and everyone else comes talking, these things will go over a lot of people's heads. So I'm the rare individual who found the Dr. Willie Soon talk that is in the description box below. And I'm the rare person who was curious enough to pull some of the data. So there are whole papers like this talking about the global warming hiatus. Okay, and he presents in that talk, albeit briefly, this figure, this chart here showing the temperature going up and then flatlining like this, trending sideways. Okay, there are whole papers like this. This never makes the news. This never makes it to MSNBC. Okay, these are things that people need to know. This is a balanced perspective. So I will be talking about this more on this channel, but I'm trying to get across the importance of science writing and science communication because the general public does not know. that there was a hiatus, and the importance of and the significance of modeling data versus real measurements from satellites and other means. Okay, the general public doesn't know. And so they're at the mercy of the politicians and also those individuals who are in the fourth estate, who are aligned with the politicians. Okay. He or she who holds the pen has the power. He or she who holds the pen has the power. And in many instances, the pen is mightier than the sword. I'm going to get into the meeting right now, but then the other thing you have to think about is with going back to my upcoming discussion with Dr. Tia-san Johnson, when you think about the low literacy rates in the country, but particularly in the Black community, this is another reason that's bad, that this is bad, because you're going to have whole swaths and communities of people who can't read and who won't be able to read this stuff for themselves. And you'll have whole groups of people who won't have access to these careers so that they can help shape the messaging. All right. So the conference, look at it, it's 36 minutes in. All right. So most of you all know that I am a blogger. I don't get to write a lot of my own stuff these days. This is a piece that I wrote about regulatory science. I think this link is in the description box. If you want to learn about what regulatory science is, I wrote this piece for people who don't know, which is most of the people in my community. And I work in regulatory science right now. And basically what this is, I'll drop the link right here. Basically what regulatory science is in a nutshell. Product safety. Okay. Pfizer and Merck, they are proposing a new drug or a new immunization like the ones we had 2 to 3 years ago. You need scientists in the government to vet those products and determine their safety before they go out to the general public. All right. That's why the immunizations, they were on emergency review. They had to review those immunizations very, very quickly and get them and allow them and approve them for the general public because we had a global health crisis. Some would say they still aren't safe, but that's the process. So that's regulatory science. You have scientists in regulatory bodies, typically in the federal government or state governments or some other entity, who are sitting down and looking at the numbers and looking at the standard deviations, looking at the side effects, looking at the efficacy, looking at the toxicity, and looking at the exposures. And they're either green lighting that product or they're rejecting that product, but usually they're green lighting that project. So that's regulatory science. So it's very granular. It's very in the weeds. It's very technical. Most regulatory writings, it's writing intensive, but most regulatory writings will go over the heads of most of the people in the general public. Okay. You guys can, should I say this? Well, if you Google me, you might find some of my regulatory writings. You might not. I won't get into detail about that now, but you'll see that it's very, very granular, and it's very, very, it will go over the head of most of the general public. It's for a specific audience. This thing that I wrote about regulatory science, this is for the general public. And that's why I wrote this. And so people could understand what it is. And so that young people would know that this is a particular career that they could get into, because I didn't know that. So that's writing for the general public. More forward-facing writing, as a new mentor just said. So the conference. So it turns out for every part of science, whether it's pharmacology, toxicology, or science writing, there is a specific society for each discipline, for each area. So there's this society here. If you have, for your own edification, if you're curious about this stuff, this exists, AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. So there's a whole community just concerned with the advancement of science and the communication of science. All right. So this exists. There are a lot of, just like, a lot of communities, they don't know anything about MIT or Stanford or Georgia Tech other than football. This is a society. All right. When I was thinking about my future career, I thought that I wanted to get into some form of science communication and science writing. I've been blogging, and I do this every week. So I'm already involved in science writing and science communication. But the question is, how does someone like me make it into a full-time career? So I was searching around for that starting about a year ago. So I found AAAS. From there, after networking in there, I found the National Association of Science Writers. So there's a whole community of science writers, for those of you who don't know, which is a lot of people, because there are people in my professional circle right now who don't know anything about this. So there's a whole community of science writers and people who write about specific topics. All right. This is a career. If you have a young person in your circle who knows how to write, who enjoys writing, or if they have a science inclination, this is an area that they can go into. So whenever you are, I'm going to bring this down shortly. So I'm in the regulatory world in the federal government, and I'm interested in pivoting into the science writing and communication world. So part of that involves learning about the world. Now we're kind of shifting into more of a career focused type of talk. You have to start to understand that world and understand the rules and understand the roles and kind of start to map it out for yourself to see where you are and where you want to go. But you also have to get in there and shake hands and meet people and network so you can kind of transition into that world. So that's why I joined these societies a little under a year ago. And that's why I went to this meeting. The meeting took place earlier this month, and T. Riddler wanted to hear about this. He's not here, interestingly. But the meeting took place in Colorado. Ironically, or coincidentally, it took place in Boulder, Colorado. Let me pull up the picture for you all here. I didn't mean to go this long. But once you get in the flow and you start setting everything up, where's Folsom Field? Where is it? Where is it? You all keep letting me know what you think in the chat, if you think anything. Yeah, so the meeting actually took place at the University of Colorado, or Colorado University. I don't remember which one it is. That particular week, the Colorado Buffaloes were playing Arizona State down in Tempe, so they weren't there. So they picked a weekend when the team wasn't there, which was smart. And interestingly, a good part of the meeting took place at Folsom Field, up in one of the luxury boxes. So we were listening to talks, networking, and in mentoring sessions right there in the football stadium. You guys can see the backdrop of the mountains there. It's a very, very beautiful area. If you've never been to Colorado, if you've never been to that part of the country, I would recommend going to check it out. Coach Prime is there, so that's an excuse for you all to go if you haven't gone. But the meeting itself, I'm going to be brief here. The meeting itself, my purpose for going to the meeting was to network. A major part of getting into any field or transitioning into another field is networking. Okay, you have to go and meet people and shake hands and make face-to-face contact. You have to go and meet people and shake hands and build relationships and familiarize yourself with people in the field you want to get into. And that's was one of my main reasons for going. Also to learn about the field. Okay, so in this field, they're basically what I've learned and what I've discerned up to this point is that there are two main parts to this field. There is the freelance aspect of it. So there's a group of people in this community who do something called freelancing. That means that they pitch stories to journals and periodicals like Stat. I think Stat is one. What's another one here? Another one is Ars Technica. Many universities have their own newsletters and periodicals. The University of Michigan has one. Nature, Science. Okay. There are freelancers who specialize in science writing, who pitch stories to these publications for a fee, and they write stories for these periodicals. So in a lot of ways, they're like independent contractors, entrepreneurs in a way. So they're freelancers. And then there's a PIO community, a public information officer slash comms community. And these are pretty much at every university, and they are in every science agency, such as the Environmental Protection Agency, or the National Institutes of Health, or the Food and Drug Administration, or the United States USDA. I should know that. What's USDA? The United States Department of Agriculture. So there's a whole communications divisions at major universities and within science government agencies. NASA, NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology. I didn't know about NIST before joining this community. So this is a whole sector, just the communication of the science, so that people on the ground level, people in the general public, the lay person, so that people know what this is. Okay. And sometimes the information is communicated with specific agendas. So if I successfully pivot into this community, I'm going to do this in such a way that it's not, the stuff I communicate is not with a specific biased agenda. Okay, so at the meeting, a huge component of the meeting was, I'm going to drop this down. A major component of the meeting for me was networking. I wanted to go and meet people, but also mentoring. There was a mentoring session there so that you could meet people who are a little further along in their careers and who could advise you, particularly a newbie like me, about how to get in and how to start furthering my connections and how to maybe do some freelancing or land in a communications office. So there was a mentoring session there. That was huge. And a lot of talks. There were a lot of talks there as well. about current topics in science and technology, because as a science writer, you have to stay up on what's going on and what the new developments are and what the issues are. So there were talks about the Colorado River. We were right there in Colorado. So access to water is a big deal right now in Colorado, in Utah, in California, in Arizona. If you're unfamiliar with that, look it up. 60 Minutes did a really good story on that about a month ago. And then, one of the questions is climate change involved with the decreasing reservoirs in Colorado? Some would say it's climate change. There was a scientist there who I want to interview, said, no, it's not climate change. It's man-made. We're draining it out. And also this is a semi-arid area, a semi-arid region. So it's not going to get a lot of rainfall. So everything environmental that we see is not necessarily due to climate change. It's maybe due to something else. So there were a lot of talks about AI. There were talks about UFOs, right? And so there were talks about current events. Okay. There was the last day there was a I think there was an event at the planetarium there with astronauts. So you could talk to astronauts in an informal setting. And it was also Indigenous Peoples Month. So there were talks about Indigenous peoples and scientific and political issues and dynamics within Indigenous lands and Indigenous peoples, Native Americans. So that was very compelling. Those groups, they have their own issues within their jurisdictions, whether it's allowing chemical companies to come in and drill for oil, or whether it's reporting on what's happening with those tribes and dissemination of information. The First Amendment is even under attack in Indigenous lands and within Indigenous tribes and peoples and nations. So there were all kinds of talks about contemporary science issues and areas. So there was a huge networking component. There was a huge networking and mentoring component. And then there was also a huge current events and getting everyone up to speed on what's happening in the world component. We were up every day. They were busing us from our hotels over to Folsom Field every morning at around 7 or 7 o'clock or 8:30. Actually 7:45 to 8:30. So it was every morning was an early morning, and every day was a full day there. Yeah, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the field. I learned a lot, and I made contacts there. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the field, and I made contacts there. It was scary. It was scary at first because there weren't a lot of people there was a handful of people of color there. So that's scary to go into a new community where you don't know anybody and where you're one of the few African Americans in there. But the flip side of it was that everyone there was very nice, and everyone was, for the most part, very welcoming. So that was cool, and I appreciated that, because you could go somewhere and be in a meeting and then just kind of be a fly on the wall, watching everybody talk and watching everybody interact. But you want to, when you're networking, you want to get out and you want to be able to talk to people and tell them who you are, find out who they are, find out where they work. Networking is not easy. but it's fun and it's necessary, particularly when you're looking to pivot into another arena. I'm trying to think, am I missing anything? I paid for myself to go. Sometimes when you're looking to do something or move into another direction, you pay for yourself to go. So my job didn't pay for me to go because this was not in their interest, and this is totally separate from my current 9 to 5. So I paid for myself to go there, and I think it's separate, but it's related. But I think the IRS will also allow me to write this off as a quote unquote training. So that went into my thought process as well. So that was the meeting, everyone. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that I need to say about this experience? Yeah. When you're looking to get into an area, or when you're looking to change up, networking and getting out and meeting people in the field is absolutely critical. And that's why I went to this. Is there anything else? I'm going to go through some of the comments here, and if I don't think of anything else, I will wrap this up. But one of my major findings in the last year is that the science writing world and the science communication world is a world all in itself. And it's a world that not a lot of people know about, not even in the hardcore, in the research areas, in the regulatory worlds. Not everybody knows what this is. I'm going to read some of your comments here. Depending upon what it is, I'm going to tiptoe around it because YouTube is closely monitoring what is being said. Yeah, and if it goes against guidelines, they'll strike videos down. As Sheed said, walking that line, be careful. Ken Sean says, so you added BGS. I solved the contagion by data collection science in math, pathology, and epigenetics. Okay. He said by stopping the endopeptide from spreading, by stopping the protease from being cut in the gut, bio, that's science, biology, math, pathology, and epigenetics to solve the problem. Okay. I do vaguely recall you being interested in the gut or the gut biome. Willie 3R says, for the layman, the people with a 5th grade reading level, I think that is standard for most media publications. Any thoughts on the Euphrates River drying up? I don't know enough about it. Now that's important too. As a scientist, as a budding science writer, it's valuable to say when you don't know, and to say I don't know enough about it yet for me to be able to comment, as opposed to just blurting something out. It's climate change. The world is burning up. No, I don't know enough about it, so I can't speak with authority on it. Willie 3R says, I heard of Ars Technica. I had never heard of it before going to this meeting. He says, Australia recently voted down a constitutional amendment that would have recognized Indigenous people specifically. Okay. He says, I think a lot of liberals virtue signal on their support for Indigenous people, but the reality shows much different. Well, there's a lot of virtue signaling. Politicians, a little known secret, Willie 3R, I think you probably know this. Politics is a lot about this. They may campaign on certain things, they may pander to certain groups to get elected, but ultimately follow this, because that's who they're ultimately going to take care of 9 times out of 10 once they get elected. And if you're not for the ADOS, FBA, tribe, whatever you want to call us, I think this is something our demographic, our ethnic group, to this day, we still don't understand. All right. Let's see. Vernon King says, so climate change was the biggest topic that attracted your ears at the conference. Was there any talk about desalination tech? No, I don't remember. I don't recall any talk about that. And I know that, well, I don't know enough about desalination. I don't know a lot about desalination. I think the master teacher has talked about that, but I don't know enough about it. Speaking of which, going back to Vernon's King, so they had one of the talks was from Michael Mann. Are you all familiar with Michael Mann? Michael E. Mann? Yes, no, maybe. Are you all familiar with Michael E. Mann? I think there's a Hollywood director named Michael E. Mann. One of the senior guards on my high school basketball team was named Michael Mann. All right, he's in my book project. But okay, everyone, this is Michael E. Mann. Let's learn something, because you all should know who this is, so that, yeah, come election time, when this stuff comes up, you guys need to know who this is. Okay, come on, Google. I want a nice picture of him too, so you guys know who he is. Okay, it's taking its time. Let's see if I can go here. Okay, there he is. All right. This is Michael E. Mann. He would be on the climate alarmist side. This is Michael E. Mann. And again, if you're not in this world, if you're not privy to these discussions, you won't know who these people are. Okay. So if you guys watch the Dr. Willie Soon talk that I enjoy listening to, and I left it in the description box as well, he talks about Michael E. Mann. Okay, Michael E. Mann, let's just read briefly. Let's see, he is the Presidential Distinguished Professor at the University at UPenn. UPenn is an Ivy League school. Do you all know who else went to UPenn? I'm going to wrap this up shortly. Do you all know who else went to UPenn? A very prominent person who was in the news right now. Who else went to UPenn? Anybody? Does anybody know who else went to UPenn? Well, Michael Mann is a professor there, but someone famous went to UPenn. I'm sure a lot of famous people did. Anybody? Bueller? Donald Trump attended the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Number 45, Mr. On trial right now. He attended the Wharton School of Business. All right, this is Michael E. Mann. And Michael E. Mann gave a talk at the meeting via Zoom. So they what's the word? He streamed in. He streamed into the meeting and gave a talk to us. I think it was Saturday morning, and that's a big deal because Michael Mann is a big deal on that side. He came under criticism for the hockey stick model. So he generated modeling data, and that's central to the climate discussion. Is, do we believe the modeling data and the predictions from the modeling data, or do we believe the hard data? Excuse me if I just hit the mic. And in the Dr. Willie Soon talk, he spent time kind of contesting the hockey stick model. So Michael Mann wrote a book called This Fragile Moment. I ordered the book. I ordered Michael Mann's book, and it's out for delivery, so I'll probably get it today. So I'm going to read Michael Mann's book. Okay, I'm not necessarily on that side of this thing. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm a data guy, so I want to see hard data, but I believe in understanding both sides of an argument. So I bought his book, and I'm gonna read it, This Fragile Moment. So that's who Michael E. Mann is, and he gave a talk there at the meeting. So you all out there, it's important to know some of who these people are, because these people are leading to decisions that are being made about our lives. All these electric vehicles, all these clean energy initiatives, you know, these battles over energy and the resources, policies, all of these people are influencing that and impacting that. So you need to know, all of us need to know who these people are, right? But so much of the general public is paying attention to the Cheesecake Factory lady. I'm partially guilty there, but we're so engrossed in our sports, in our social media, and the Cheesecake Factory lady that we don't have the interest or the time to look at what these people are doing and saying, and what our world leaders are putting into place for us and our lives. So when Michael Mann, when he streamed into the when I looked at the schedule, and I said, "Oh, Michael E. Mann is talking," I knew who that was because I'd been studying this area. So that's all. All right, everyone. I need to go. I spoke for over an hour. I only intended to go for 30 minutes, and that's it. That was the conference. So whatever you're looking to pivot into a new area, or even if you're just looking for a new gig, it's important to network. Learn the world, learn the field, learn the ins and outs of it. And it's important to put yourself in a new group of people, even if you're one of the only minorities or one of the only people of color there. It's important to be able to do that. It's scary, but it's important to be able to do it. And you're also a representative for your race when you do that, because you may be one of the few Black people that they know or that they've ever met. So it's important to put yourself in those arenas, but also to put your best foot forward when you go into those arenas. So yeah, so I will keep you guys informed here of my science writing pivot, wherever it is. I did get a mentor there, and I am slowly but steadily networking and trying to leverage that experience into something else. So I will keep you guys informed in a way that's pertinent for me and protective of myself and my life here. I will keep you guys informed and try to educate you all as well. But this is a field, and this is a thing. But also try to keep yourselves informed on what's going on. The election is about to start. All the campaigning is going to ramp up, and it's important to be able to understand the policies that they're proposing and to understand what they're talking about, and not just be taken by whether or not they look like you, or whether or not you like them, or whether or not they can dance, or whether or not they can virtue signal. You need to understand the policies and the long-term ramifications of what's being proposed. Okay? And I think I'll stop there. All right, everyone. This is Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. If you want to donate something to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are in the description box below. Please like, share, and subscribe, especially if you are new. If you're a returning sub, please like and share. And please consider signing up for the Big Words LLC newsletter. I won't show it this morning. The link is in the description box below. I am a writer, so that's a part of my life, and that's what I do. And with that, I am going to wrap this up. T. Riddler, hopefully you are out there, and you weren't able to watch this live, but the playback is there for you as well. So in future content, maybe I will do something on strokes, and I will revisit carbon dioxide. Oh, I know. Everyone, I left the link for the Tom Nelson podcast. The Tom Nelson podcast. That's where I found the Dr. Willie Soon talk. Let me see if I could pull it. No, I won't try to. Well, let me try to pull it up for you guys. I watch this podcast pretty regularly now. And as much as I can, I try to share it on my community tab. I know I share things over here. Some of you all have never seen these people or heard of this stuff. But this is a podcast I highly recommend you take a look at and listen in on. All right. Through this podcast, see, he has a lot of people from the quote unquote the denier side. So you have people over there like Dr. Soon, Will Happer, right? There was a really good talk that I listened to this week by Sharon Camp from the CO2 Learning Center. So it turns out there's a CO2 Learning Center. So there's a group of people now who are launching their own campaign to say CO2 is not bad. As a matter of fact, it's necessary. But that particular talk was also about homeschooling and how a lot of public K through 12 schools are now more about indoctrination versus actually teaching the basics that students need to know, and how much and about how those schools are teaching misinformation regarding science. So I would highly recommend everyone subscribe to this podcast and take a look at this podcast. You may not understand everything that's being said, but if you just watch and listen for a little while, you'll start to be able to pick up on what's being said and why. All right, everyone, that's it. Let me get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I will talk to you the next time. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye. And the link for the Tom Nelson podcast, that's in the description box as well. Educate yourselves.